Hey guys, my name is James Manny, owner of MXU. Welcome to my in-depth seated position video. This video will be divided into chapters for those of you who are just looking to brief yourselves on one element of this position. We will go over everything though, so if you're along for the ride, sit back, relax, and enjoy. My goal with this video is to give everyone the opportunity to learn all of these elements and truly understand them rather than just trying to memorize. So if you have any questions throughout the video, just drop a comment below. By the way, to make this video a little more interactive and helpful, do this with me. So throw all your gear on, set the bike up in the garage, and go through all of these movements so you can truly understand everything that's going on. With that being said, let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is the transition to the seat. Extremely important part of the seated position is doing your work ahead of time. So let's make sure that we put ourselves in the proper position right off the bat. So we're in our attack position here, right? It comes time to sit. By the way, I do not want you sitting while braking. We always do our braking standing up. That way we don't get all of the feedback from the bike into our pelvis. So we're standing through our braking zone and then we go to transfer to the seat. We need that transition to be as quick as possible. What I don't want to happen is you're coming through the braking zone and you start to transition rather slowly, right? And you find yourself in the in-between space. This is that position in between standing and sitting where you have a ton of pressure on your quads and the front muscles in your shins. And then also you're loading the front end of the bike through the braking zone. Extremely dangerous. So we want to make sure that we're either here or we're here. It should be just like a light switch. Your feet play an extremely important role in the transition process to the seat. So we go from a dropped heel position when we're standing up in the attack position to raising our heels and driving our weight back when we get into the seat. It's extremely important that we rely on our feet in the seated position as we're still using those ankles to absorb those small impacts out on the track. What I don't want to happen is the feet come out to the outside edge of the foot peg and then our legs are able to slap around. So let's make sure we're extremely tight and secure. That sets the foundation for everything else. So lock those legs in. Really focus on using your outside foot in each turn to drive that weight back and hold yourself forward in the seat. A great habit to practice is riding with both feet on the pegs. You can work on weight transfer that way, and then both of your feet are tucked in tight to the frame. So now you're really getting the hang of being in tune with your motorcycle. If you use both feet to hold yourself forward, you're now able to sit in that proper position much easier than it would be if you're hanging that foot off and using it as a kickstand or a probe. Let's talk about where we need to sit on the bike. We want to be about a hand's width away from the front edge of the seat at all times in that seated position. The reason why I say this is because if we sit too far forward up on that gas cap, you just have way too much weight to the front end. That rear end can very easily step out in a corner. If we sit too far back, our upper body ends up extending, my head comes too far back, and then my feet also flatten out on the foot pegs and they're not really able to do their job. So if I sit in that proper position, my arms are nice and stable, I'm nice and strong, my head is nice and far forward, and then also my feet are able to do their job. Now, if you're on a Yamaha 4-stroke, it's a little bit different. So there's a flap here that you flip open to access the gas cap. What I tell riders is to position themselves right on the crack. So there's the front edge of the seat and then the flap. Position yourselves right on that crack. The next extremely important element of the seated position is your pelvis. So we talked about this in the attack position video, and that pelvic position is exactly the same when you're standing up as it is when you're sitting down. So if you have any questions on that, view that attack position video first and then come back to this. But just to remind you, pelvis always needs to be rotated forward so that we can create that isolation. The wrong way to do this is to allow ourselves to slouch into the seat. That causes us to disengage our core and we end up sliding back on the seat as we accelerate. we need to really reinforce ourselves here, especially me on this big 450. When I crack that throttle, there's going to be a lot of force pulling me back. So I need to rotate that pelvis forward, drive the butt down into the seat, and really engage my core. Now also, to maintain isolation, I need to sit nice and tall, keep that pelvis rotated forward, and I can work that bike underneath me without my head moving from side to side. So I'm letting my lower body do its job while my upper body remains nice and stable, and my head is not moving. Hand position, exactly the same as the attack position. We want to take our hands from this position here and make sure that our hands are rotated out, and we're really grabbing that grip with these two fingers, these two outside fingers here, and the fatty part of our hands. As we rotate our hands out, it's going to create a natural angle of my wrist that drives outwards rather than back towards my torso. So really focus on taking your hands from this position to this position here. The elbows will naturally kick out, and there you go. You have your stabilizers. You're nice and strong, nice and stable. Another thing that will help you with proper hand position is simply just bringing your levers inwards. So if you look at my levers on this bike, they're pretty far in, and that's just going to allow me to execute this position. If I were to grip the bike like this, then my hands are barely over top the levers. So it's gonna force me to execute proper hand position if I wanna be in the sweet spot of my levers. So get those levers in, it'll force you to kick your hands out, and that's just an easy way to keep your upper body stable. So the core, back, and shoulders are an extremely important element to this whole seated position. What I mean by that is, as we go through these turns, we need to make sure that we keep a nice tight core, almost as if someone's about to punch us in the chest. And that's going to keep us really stable as we go through the mid corner and as we accelerate out. As we accelerate, we need to compensate for that force somehow. What I most commonly see is riders will tend to yank themselves forward and down towards the crossbar pad to try and compensate. The problem with that is that my elbows come and tuck in by my sides, so I'm extremely unstable in the upper body. The solution to this is simply sitting up nice and tall and pinching our shoulder blades together and using our back muscles as if we're rowing a boat rather than pulling ourselves forward. So we pinch those shoulder blades together and bring the chest forward slightly as if someone has a string attached to my chest and is just gently pulling on that string. So I'm going to come forward under acceleration just a little bit. In general here, my seated position is very centered. So my upper body is essentially perpendicular to the ground, except for when I accelerate, it comes slightly forward. But for the most part, I'm sitting pretty upright and tall, and that's it. I'm not leaning super far forward when I sit down. So when I transition, I have a nice hip hinge in the attack position, but then when it's time to get to the seat, I'm nice and upright and tall. There you have it. We just covered all of the elements of the seated position. If you guys have any questions about any elements in this video, drop a comment below, like and subscribe, because we have much more of this content coming in the future. If you want to train with me in person and you're from the Northeast, visit ridemxu.com. We can book a private development session to dive deep into your riding. For more info on that, check out the website. Follow me on Instagram, jmanny749, all that jazz. Thanks for flying MXU Airlines.